Jane Fendelman's Preach from the Mountaintop Sunday, January 17th or 18th, something like that. Poverty thinking and abundance and gratitude. Make this a thing that you practice self-observation on daily, please. You'll see how much your life will change. Okay. One of the biggest mistakes that human beings make is that they tell themselves there is only one job or one best friend for me or one house, place for me to live, one neighborhood for me to live in, one man, even though that man or woman is not treating you right. They tell themselves there's only one, and they tell themselves, I can't find a better or another one of these ones. And that's true. You won't, because there's only one of each thing, because we, people, things, everything, they're like snowflakes. They're all different. That's true. But telling yourself that that one is the only one you'll ever be able to get, and that it is the best one in the universe is probably just not true. So I see people stay in relationships or jobs or homes or neighborhoods that are really just not working for them. So I want to talk about Kabbalah today, about the Aph Bait in particular. It was a gazillion years ago, 25 years ago, when I was the research assistant for George Addair, that I learned about this. George wanted me to study the Aph Bait, which is the Hebrew alphabet, and teach him about it. He was such a cool guy. He got me to study the most amazing things. What he had heard about the Aph Bait was every single character, every single letter in the Hebrew alphabet had a meaning and had a life. And as I started studying it, I found out that was true. It was amazing. It was amazing. And this is all 25 years ago when I was 30, and I was starting to really go through a healing myself. And I learned something about these two letters called Dalet and Gimel. And I may have nuances wrong about this story, and I'm sure people will correct me, and I welcome corrections. But here's what I learned about it. Gimel is the giver. And in the Hebrew Alef Bet, Dalet is the receiver. And so just in the story of the Aph Bait, Dalet is the beggar, and Gimel is the giver. And so when you're studying the Kabbalah and the Aph Bait, the question that's posed by your teachers is always, why is it that if Dalet is the receiver, why does he have his back turned to Gimel? Why isn't he turned toward Gimel and grateful and thanking him? And the reason is Gimel, the giver, will benefit in the afterlife. And Dalet will only benefit in this life from begging and receiving. Dalet will only benefit in this life from receiving. Gimel will benefit in the afterlife. Therefore, they say that Dalet is making the greater sacrifice than Gimel. The beggar is making the greater sacrifice than Gimel, the giver. Why is the beggar making the greater sacrifice? Because he will only benefit in this life. He will not benefit in the afterlife. And so he's making the greater sacrifice. Well, the reason why this was so profound to me at the time was because I was working on releasing old traumas from my childhood, and I had a lot of anger, which is important first step if you have old traumas. You know, and almost everybody has old traumas from their childhood, physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuses, and stuff we have to get over. People angry at their parents for this or that. And so I was at the point of the healing where I was angry, which is a good first step. It's a higher step than denial. Denial's the lowest step. And when we come out of denial, we have rage usually at first. And so I was mad. I was still mad. I was getting over that because rage helps us start to set healthy boundaries where we weren't before. So I was on the tail end of that when I started studying the Aph Bait for George Addair, the founder of Omega Vector. And when I started studying about Dalet and Gimel, I started thinking, wow, this could be said, the same thing could be said of my quote-unquote quote abusers. For instance, this is a story that's not a secret. In fact, it's on my Healing Childhood Trauma CD. And when I was 12, I got raped by the leader of our neighborhood gang, and he was 16 or 17. I was 12. And I went into denial. And then when I was 30, 29, I started coming out of denial and having rage and anger. And when I started studying this, the higher spiritual teachings, I started realizing, because I was getting strong and empowered, and I'd started studying to become a counselor, and I became an amazing crackerjack miracle worker at helping people heal old traumas, especially sexual abuse. And I developed a brief therapy technique for that, and I was going around teaching it at hospitals and groups and women's shelters, and I worked at Mountain Valley Clinic for Sex Offenders. I found out that, as this was all healing in me, that I could work with sex offenders or their victims, quote unquote victims, because I didn't have judgment because of this healing process. And I started realizing a higher step for me, and this is hard for people to hold this in their consciousness sometimes. So if you're not ready to hear this, I totally understand. That my rapist made the greater sacrifice because he will always be a rapist. And I could overcome it and heal from it and become great and powerful and magnificent and an amazing teacher because of it, because of what I learned from getting through it and getting over it. So this was an amazing part of my first steps into powerfully receiving my gifts from the universe and learning about what sacrifice is, and the giver and the beggar, and the, like when you take something that you didn't really earn, you're the beggar, and you'll only benefit in this life. And the giver, so the beggar's making the bigger sacrifice because, that jerk will always be a jerk. He'll, if people ever found out, he will always be perceived as a rapist. But I'm perceived as a grown-up, empowered woman with wings on her back. So that's a big deal. It's a big, cool deal. Okay, so back to gratitude and the power of opening to the universe and receiving the gifts of the universe. First is receiving your own gifts, of course, and doing what you love doing. And back to when we tell ourselves there's only one job or only one way for me to get to where I want to go. That's poverty thinking. And poverty thinking comes from old programming and or some old trauma that got you shut down so that you're limiting or blocking love and goodness. So it's extremely important to heal old wounds and glean the gifts from them so that you can open your heart. I know I'm talking about two subjects here, but they do converge, because while you're walking around on guard and closed up, all that goodness and the wealth of the universe can't get in. So your job is to observe your poverty thinking and catch yourself when you're telling yourself there's only one job, one relationship that's not working. I can't leave this because there won't be something better for me. And it's really like letting go of the last trapeze. There's going to be moments in time where you're suspended in midair, where you're strictly going on faith that something better is coming. And you're suspended in midair, and then you catch that next trapeze. And then life does get bigger and better. And you got to freaking open your heart to the goodness of the universe, because it is out there. And trust is not for other people. Trust is only for yourself. Do I trust me to make good choices for me? Yes, I know there's people out there that take advantage or use or abuse or traumatize or rape other people. Yeah, I know there is. But I am safe because I say I'm safe. And I trust me to handle what comes at me. And if I falter, and if I collapse, I know me. And I know that I'll get back up again, like I always do. And if I can't, I know that I'm smart enough to ask for help from friends or from a counselor or from Sue Gilmore. I trust me to take care of me, which is handy, because then the world can just be exactly the way that it is. And I don't have to make it be a certain way. And then I am truly abundant. So, my prayer for the new year, I pray to my heart that it is open to new and more powerful and abundant and loving ways of being. And that my faith is magnified and multiplied by 1,000. And therefore I will relax into contentment and peace and enjoy the journey. I wish you massive abundance in health and love and wealth and joy, peace, contentment, and mercy, mercy, mercy on you, mercy on you, and mercy on others.